Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the eDiscovery Channel. This is Tom O'Connor speaking to you from New Orleans, Louisiana, as always, with Rocky Messing from Tel Aviv. You're still in Tel Aviv, I take it, Rocky?
I am still right outside Tel Aviv.
There we go.
The extreme heat that we've got over here right now.
It's same thing here. It's hurricane season, or as we call it in New Orleans, the 90-90 season, which is 90 degrees temperature and 90% humidity.
Nice.
It will stay that way until football season. Hopefully, we'll have a football season, but that's the other discussion we had. Hey, we're both very, very happy and glad she could join us to have as our guest today. Joy Heath Rush. Joy's the CEO. Is that correct, Joy, of ILTA?
It is indeed.
All right.
Chief cook and bottle washer.
Yeah. Well, and as anybody who knows ILTA, and by the way, if you haven't been to ILTA Con, the live conference, well, as people in New Orleans like to say, that's just a shame. It's Joy, you've had a tumultuous several years, however, as CEO. You came in as a temporary CEO when there was some change in transition of officers, and then you got the full-time appointment and were able to really, I thought, pull together a great show last year. That old ILTA atmosphere was there, and now you're hit with the virus, so you've had to go from ILTA Con to ILTA. What are you calling it? ILTA On. ILTA On, which I thought was a beautiful marketing strike there. Kudos to whoever brought that up. So hey, just as sort of a quick background before Rocky hits you with some questions, give us a little more background. I knew you from, now we'll both age ourselves, or I'll age ourselves. I remember you from the early WordPerfect Legal Users Day days.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Right? And I go back in ILTA, I go back to the VSlug days, the old Wang VS Legal Users Group, and my old friend Browning Marian, whose picture is back here someplace. We used to drive to Palm Springs from San Diego. I was living in San Diego at the time, working on some matters, and we would get in the car and have a wonderful ride over to Palm Springs for the VSlug meetings, and then that all exploded. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about your background, anything you'd like to say about ILTA.
Well, I appreciate it, Tom, and yeah, we were both 5 years old. We were doing that WordPerfect stuff, so very precocious, right?
Really,
so
just 20 years ago, that's amazing.
Yeah, and my old law firm was violating all kinds of child labor laws, but what can you do about that? That's just
as they do, right?
And I love to hear Browning's name come up. Absolutely one of my favorite people. But I did litigation support when litigation support wasn't cool. I started at Sidley in 1986. One of the first projects I worked on was a DB2 litigation support database that we were using a 3270 emulator to print it to my IBM 5520 laser, 6670 laser printer. Absolutely. Yep. And I worked with a guy named Tom Johnston, who was he was the head of Washington Apple Pie, the Apple user group, or the early days of Apple. So, we're really talking about ancient history here. I had a BRS litigation support database for a big energy matter.
Wow.
And I did a lot of cha-ching, stamping of Bates stamping, the old memorable cha-ching. Yeah. So my history.
Does any of this ring a bell?
So I'm following along. I'm doing okay. I get 50%.
Where were you were you born in 1986?
86. Let's see. I think that was I was
Third
born.
Grade?
Huh? I was in fourth grade then. Yeah.
Fourth grade. Okay.
So
and we're out there with the.
I was not stamping anything.
And
we're out there trailblazing for you, Rocky. We were beating down the path.
And I was telling Rocky, we were chatting yesterday. I said, I was never part of VSlug because I think I was in one of the only large law firms on the planet that never used Wang. Never used Wang, never used Novell. So we were all IBM technology, and then moved to an IP network.
Right.
In
Sidley Austin?
1988.
Was that when you were Sidley?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was quite different. And so my journey, I spent 28 years at Sidley, and then I spent 5 years at one of the business partners at an ILTA sponsor before I joined ILTA. And my first ILTA conference was 1996. So, and I haven't missed one since then, and I've spoken at most of them. And you said it's an amazing experience. But, you know, I think one of the things I'm probably proudest of is the year-round value we try to deliver. It's not just about the conference, to members and business partners. And I think I'm really proud of my team and the way they've been so agile and flexible in changing direction, spinning up lots of really just-in-time programming to help people navigate this unpredictable situation. We even created a roundtable series called There Are No Experts, because we're all figuring this stuff out as we go along. And the only way we're going to be able to be successful is to create the future together. You know, we're going to work together to figure out what I won't say the new normals. I don't think anything's going to be normal for a while.
No.
But to keep moving forward in a positive way.
Cool.
So let's talk a little bit about I mean, we'll get to the conference a little bit later, but let's talk a little bit more about the round-the-year programming that ILTA does, both now with COVID and everything else going on, but in general, because I don't think a lot of people are aware, beyond the fact that ILTA is, you know, throws ILTACon. I don't think people are aware of a lot of the other things that are going on, the benefits, the programming that you and your team are doing. So fill us in a little bit.
Well, I'm always happy to talk about that. So we have programming in a number of different avenues. We have webinars that are, I would say, pretty formal presentations. They have a topic that it's driven by our volunteers. So the topics really come from our members and business partners. It's what they believe is relevant. And the average webinar takes us about 3 to 6 months to put together, because we're, you know, very careful, very formal about the processes. But we also try to produce a lot of just-in-time content. So we have a blog series, we have a podcast series, we do virtual roundtables is one of our most popular programming methods, where we just pick a topic, we get a couple smart people, and we just chat. And then we talk about takeaways. So we record those. We have a quarterly magazine, which we moved from print to digital. And it has about 26,000 reads a month or a quarter for the magazine. And the quality is very, very high. We have not only my staff, but volunteers who help vet the topics, make sure that the content is great. We do a number of white papers and surveys. I mean, the ILTA Tech Survey is one of the marquee, you know, kind of publications in our world that normally comes out around ILTACon time, so late August or 1st of September, because many of our members are doing their budgets for the following year around that time, and they take that survey, that tech survey, and helps drive their budget conversations and their priorities. Because, you know, as a friend of mine says, law firms love to be the first to be second. And so they always want to know what everybody else is doing, you know, when they're making decisions. And so, but we also do many other surveys during the year, and white papers we do, and I'm sure Tom has even contributed to this. We do a litigation support white paper every year that talks about trends there. And we also do a lot of mini events. Like we do a litigation support focused event every year in October. And it's done in person, traditionally at Wendy's corporate headquarters in Dublin. They've always been happy to host us there, and they're fantastic people in that organization. This year, of course, it will be virtual, but it's a day long of nothing but litigation support oriented programming that we sell out every year. I mean, people are always interested in that. So we have way more than ILTACon. We had a very successful virtual legal security conference. We've been running our legal security conference, I think we're about 10 years, something like that. And this year was the first time it was virtual. And our attendance was up about a third over the highest attendance we had ever had in the history of that conference, including a lot of C-level people that wouldn't normally have been there. And it's a very deep dive focus on security. And this year we talked a lot about what I call the barn door and the horse issue. Is we all had to, we love the word pivot. That's our favorite word these days, but we all had to pivot to working from home literally overnight. And, making sure that you're kind of retrofitting your security plan back into that and retrofitting your information governance plan back into that. There was a lot of conversation. Again, I call it when working from home is the rule rather than the exception, then the stakes change on a whole bunch of these things. And so that's just some of what ILTA is doing, kind of year round to support our members and our business partners.
I just quickly interject. It has always been clear to me, and I've lived in various parts of the country, but the local user groups of ILTA put on some very, very strong programs as well for their local members. And although, as you said, ILTACon itself is always a great conference. The ability to do both the things you talked about and have local meetings and support, I also think are a real strength of the
Yeah, thank you, Tom. And it's amazing how our local volunteers, our member liaisons, we call them, have stepped up to create more virtual local meetings because people need these connections more than ever. We had one that we did in California recently. So it was San Diego, Orange County, Century City, and downtown LA. We had over 80 people.
Wow.
At that virtual event and tons of conversation. And one of the things I'm actually super excited about doing a virtual event is ILTACon, again, is amazing, right? It's an amazing event. But in reality, only about 1,500 to 1,800 of our members and about 300 of our business partners can attend that every year. And that means there's 20-something thousand ILTANs who can't have that experience. Either they're in a far
flung part. Is that what you call them? ILTANs?
ILTANs. Yep, ILTANs. There are thousands of ILTANs that can never attend that event because of their position in their organization, where they live, and the fact that we're going to be able to bring some of that experience out to a broader audience is really exciting to me. And frankly, there's a diversity and inclusion piece of it that I'm excited about too, particularly for our younger ILTANs and people that are in roles that may not traditionally have been eligible to attend conference in person will have access to programming, and I'm very excited about that.
Good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Speaking of that, real quick, I know you want to talk about it, Rocky, but I would expect the attendance is going to explode with the conference online.
I'm certainly hoping so, Tom. That's the wish. And on a whole bunch of levels, because we have our ILTACon committee, and they're amazing. Our volunteers. I mean, they had to redesign their conference.
Yeah.
Because the conference really was set in January.
Yep.
And we had to redefine it, and my staff, of course, had a lot of stuff to do. And I also just want to say our business partners have been absolutely wonderful. They're embracing the opportunities that are coming with a virtual event. And one of the things I've been saying is, look, if you think this is the last virtual event you're going to do, the genie is out of the bottle, right?
Yeah.
So there will be more of these, and people want to return to in-person events, but I think I would be hard-pressed to say that there won't be at least a significant virtual component of pretty much any physical event for the foreseeable future.
Yep.
And so learning some great techniques for digital marketing and taking advantage of those opportunities. I mean, I'm excited that we'll be able to have some speakers that traditionally would have been difficult for us to host because they couldn't travel, for example.
Right.
So
Right.
that's a lot of opportunity to embrace.
So do you see that there's, I'm sure you've already got numbers that are starting to come in terms of what the expectations are. Do you see an increase in the international side? People, because obviously I've been lucky enough to come in for quite a number of ILTACons over the last few years. Mm-hmm. But obviously this year not doing any travel. So, do you see that the numbers are going up on an international side?
There's no question about that. And particularly in some of our traditionally strong markets, Australia, whose borders are closed, they wouldn't be able to come anyway. Brazil, which has a very large legal economy and a lot of devoted ILTAns, and in the UK and Europe. And actually, we've got a group of advisors from outside of North America that are working with us on the grid, because we are going to be running sessions in some cases twice, so that they're in time zones that are more friendly. Because obviously one of the advantages of an in-person event is everybody is by definition in the same time zone, during that period. And they may be jet lagged, but they're all there in the same time zone. And so we're actually.
Jet lag, is that what you call the morning after you were out all night partying?
Yes, we call that jet lagged. Yeah, and I had to take work calls, in the morning before I come to my sessions. All of those things.
Yes.
But we're looking at.
If I could interject, sorry, Joy. You mentioned your partners. Has the vendor response been good to the virtual setting? I mean,
oh yes, absolutely. I mean, I think there are a lot of people who are, I won't say skeptical. I think that's a little bit too strong a word. They're inexperienced, right, doing this kind of event. And there are a lot of different approaches to it. I mean, in some cases where someone is kind of sitting at a desk for 24 hours waiting for somebody to drop by and say hello. And so one of the things we did, because we understand that our business partners, are trying to get leads, and they're trying to talk to existing customers and cement relationships, and they're trying to demonstrate thought leadership. A lot of times they're doing product or service launches at our event. So we did focus groups with both our business partners and our members before we kind of announced the format for ILTA ON, to find out what people want. And one of the interesting perspectives from the members was that they really see a virtual event as an opportunity for business partners to bring some resources to bear that have been hard to bring to bear before. So, for example, in my old vendor company, our main development team was in the Ukraine. And it wasn't practical to bring all of the product development leads to the US. There were visas and all kinds of issues, but in a virtual event, you can bring those people to the table. And that's something that members are really interested in. They're also interested in the opportunity to engage more with senior management, in a way that doesn't stretch those people in their travel and, all the other engagements that they have.
Right.
And they think this is an opportunity, again, in the spirit of this, what I call hashtag creating the future together. The members and business partners want to sit together and say, look, we're all in this. You have products and services from us. We want to move forward. You want to move forward. Let's talk together about the roadmap. Have you reprioritized your development, for example, or maybe you need to spend, maybe the members say, I think you need to spend more time on beefing up the remote access or doing things to your cloud offering or whatever it is. But this is a great opportunity for these groups to sit together and say, look, we're all in this. Let's work on it together and make the most of it together. And in my experience, that's how you build loyalty both ways. And we're in a relationship business, folks. Let's face it. The practice of law at its root is a relationship business. And so all of us that are around the practice of law understand the importance of relationships. And these are opportunities to cement those.
Absolutely. Great. So, you've been doing this for a while, as we've established. What's the biggest change that you've seen over the last, let's keep it just in the last 20 years, the modern era of legal technology. What's the biggest change that you've seen there, and what's the thing that you think is going to impact the most from a technology standpoint going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you talk about technology in the practice of law, and this probably sounds really basic, but for those of us that have been around a minute or two, is the amount of work that's been driven to the lawyers. Work that lawyers would never have done 20 years ago. I mean, it wasn't that uncommon 20 years ago for a really senior rainmaker to have not only a secretary, to have two secretaries. One that did nothing but handle his or her diary, and the other one was doing all kinds of other work. That just simply isn't true anymore. The lawyers are much more self-sufficient in a lot of things that they're doing. And it means that the role of this executive assistant, legal assistant, they have lots of different names, but has changed fundamentally. So it's the more work being driven to the lawyers and the mix of work that's happening inside these organizations between the practicing lawyers, the kind of paraprofessionals like paralegals, the administrative support professionals, and then this whole new category of lawyers that are not practicing. So people that are doing innovation, that are doing knowledge management, that are doing, e-discovery work. And yes, they may be billable, but they're not practicing in the traditional sense of what you saw 20 years ago. So it's that division of labor, who's doing what, where the work is happening, what kind of work it is, that technology has enabled. So, and I just think that, for example, AI is the next step in that. I mean, when people talk about lawyers losing their jobs to AI engines, for example, we were talking at the beginning of this about the Bates stamping and the, physical stamping. Nobody would argue that they would want a first-year associate coming out of the University of Chicago to spend 8 to 12 hours a day doing that. But that was common in the mid-'80s. That's what first-year associates did. Nobody would go back to that. And I think that you have to look at tools like AI in the same way. It's not that jobs and roles are going to go away, but maybe tasks will change. And at the end of the day, you got to focus on outcomes. That's what clients want, is outcomes. So you want the smart people that are coming out of it. Of course, I have to say University of Chicago because I'm in Chicago. You want the smart, or Northwestern. You want the smart people coming out of those law schools to focus on the business problems that they're meant to solve, and not doing work that could be done quicker for better outcomes with technology or in different levels of the organization.
And I think that's the key, is that absolutely the better outcomes, but also at a better price point. And that's what the technology also can enable. Not that you lose the smarts and the brains that go on, that there's a reason why an attorney is good and is hired by a corporation, is because they are going to be able to get you to that outcome, and that's using their brain and using all of their schooling and all of their experience. But if they can be, either much more scalable and be able to reach more clients at, with the same amount of work and the same limited resources, then that's more power to them and more power to the firm that's bringing them in.
Well, and there's significant realization issues here too, Rocky. I mean, and that's the piece a lot of people don't have visibility in. I mean, where technology can really be brought to bear is in realization, is that, if you can charge 10 minutes to do a task that the client thinks should take 10 minutes, and you really only spend 10 minutes, that's great, because you're doing 100% recovery rather than spending 60 minutes for which you only recover 10. And that's a really important business issue. And actually, this is a conversation I have with CIOs all the time, is do you know what your realization rates are, and do you know what your profitable practices are? If you have a practice which is potentially very profitable and has low realization rates, then talk to your practice group head and let's see if we can't get some technology brought to bear there to turn a modestly profitable practice into a very profitable practice, because realization is going to improve.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Quick question and observation, Joy. Your take on this. So you mentioned diversity and inclusiveness.
Mm-hmm.
We all know that lawyers have not just fought first. They wanted first to be second. In many cases, they wanted first to be last. especially in technology. And I think that, this is my opinion now, I think that is related to the fact that the numbers we've seen certainly in the AmLaw 100 are the top level people in those firms still tend to be old white males. And I fear that if it were not for the COVID virus, they wouldn't have adopted much of this technology that in many cases we've had around. Zoom did not pop into existence 3 months ago. So the push for more inclusiveness, the push for changing that at the top, that's going to be a struggle. And I'm wondering if you think part of that will include adapting new technology. If we get younger people, more women, more people of color, more diversity, are we at the same time also going to have fresh faces looking at things with not so much hesitation about technology? Or am I just, is this like pie in the sky?
No. I share your generally optimistic view of the situation. I mean, again, as I talk to CIOs and IT directors, and we actually had our very first There Are No Experts roundtable we did was about not wasting the seat at the table, not squandering the seat at the table you've earned. So right now, the political capital that most of our IT people have, senior IT people, is as high as it's ever been. And I can't speak as much to law departments because I'm not as familiar with their operation, although I'm sure it's the same. But there's a lot of corporate IT there too. But certainly in law firms, I mean, you think about a managing partner turned to the IT director and said, we can make 1,000 people work remotely in 24 hours, right? The IT director said, yeah, and then they delivered. And so I think that what that has done is really provided a bully pulpit for the people in IT, and can not only respond but bring to the table. It's like, that paperless office budget item that I've had in the budget every year for the last 20 years, and you've always cut it. It's been the sacrificial lamb. This is the time. And I think what uniquely qualifies IT people to really show leadership here is they're change managers, they're change agents. Change is their daily life. They're very adept at it. And then I think the second thing is they know what the technology will do, because they've been out there at an ILTA event, a local meeting, or ILTACon, or attended a webinar. They're reading the tech survey. They're talking with their peers. And so they know what is possible. And now is a time to say, not only am I going to react, I'm going to come to you and say, look, and while we're talking about business transformation, then how about this? And
so the other big problem is, you just mentioned IT, lack of women in the IT field overall. I saw a remarkable interview with Melinda Gates on something the other night. I forget what it was, but that's a subject dear to her heart. And she said her take was, we don't have enough women taking science and math and computer courses and majors in college. She said, of course, how are we going to get them downstream when they're not learning this stuff ahead of time? What's your take? I mean, you think we'll make any inroads there? Is ILTA seeing any more female IT people coming up?
Well, it's interesting. First of all, there actually are a fair amount of women IT people in my generation. And then it decreased. And one of the reasons, actually, both of you probably know Judy Flournoy, who's the CIO at Kelly Dry. And we're much of a generation. I'm not trying to out her age, but let's just say we have a similar career trajectory. She contends, and I think she's right, that why there were so many women of our generation that were in the early days of technology is because we could type. And but it's true.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
Things were keyboard centered. It was word processing. It was that was the beginning. And so it opened doors for those of us that were technologically savvier, that were just curious, that were willing to experiment. Our diversity and inclusion task force that ILTA seated late last year, and our co-chairs are Andy Morris from Thompson Hine and Jillian Power from Lathrop GMP. or GPM. I'm going to say they merge, so I have to make sure to say it right. But Andy talks a lot about the need to improve the pipeline of folks, of women and diverse ethnicities and all of that into technology. And at our legal security conference every year, we've been running a women who lead breakfast, because even among IT people, I mean, the women in security are real unicorns. In some ways, it's even less than other areas of technology. They're security professionals. And in talking with some of the CIOs of large firms there, they said, look, we would love to have more women. We don't get the resumes. If I have a position open and I get 30 resumes and they're all men, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And so it absolutely starts with the pipeline. And this is one of the things, like, again, talking about our virtual legal security conference, we had a team pack where you could, for $999, have 10 people from your organization. Well, what a great way to take that promising help desk person that's interested in security and get them some real exposure to some of the topics, see if they have an aptitude for it. So one of the things that virtual conferences and education do is give you a chance to skill up internally, and I think that creates more diversity opportunity. But I will tell you guys, when I talk to people about diversity, and there are lots of efforts at the lawyer level, pretty much in every organization, law firm, corporate law department, we need, I mean, and corporates have made a lot of strides. There are more female GCs now than there have ever been. Right. But the focus is very much on lawyers, and I get it, right? I absolutely get it. But if they then also turn their focus down to the level of the, I shouldn't say down, but to the level of the staff, they will find a whole another, set of opportunities for diversity.
So I will say 2 observations on that. The first is I've seen, and specifically in the security area, outside the United States, a lot more women are involved in security and in IT in general, technology and development in general. It's still very much a male-dominated field, but there's definitely more female representation outside of the United States, which I think a lot of that comes from efforts that started a long time ago to get women involved in STEM education and getting them on the same track, let's say, because the intelligence is not just there; it's generally more than any of us men, but they have to be pointed and get the interest going. And I think in some international communities, that's really been a focus for a while already. The second observation, though, is I think that you brought up a great point. The skilling side of things, the pandemic and the virtual, not just conferences, but just general, the ability to skill up virtually on your own schedule with flexibility is really, really, really going to have an impact, in my opinion, going forward on the general inclusiveness and diversity that we see throughout the technology industry.
I very much agree with that. And one of the programs we've had through our, I call this hashtag Creating the Future Together, we have a program called Teach a Skill, Learn a Skill. And, a lot of pandemic stuff. I mean, how many people have been baking sourdough bread? That's been one of the big things. Everyone's baking sourdough bread but we're talking about business skills. So, for example, Donna Payne has been doing a series of individual coaching with people about their brand. I've been doing small group sessions. I think I've done 8 or 10 of them now on how to facilitate virtual meetings, because it's a skill. You're not born knowing how to do it. It's a skill. And so these are times to skill up. And one of the other things I will say about the year-round, kind of ILTA experience and tie it in, is our volunteer opportunities are a great way for people to learn skills in a safe environment. They can learn project management skills and leadership skills and facilitation skills and public speaking skills in a very safe, non-threatening, there's really no risk You know, and it benefits not only the individual, but it benefits the organization. They get, you know, better skilled people coming up and a return on their investment. So I really agree with that skilling up, and it's going to even level the playing field a little bit, I think, on access to those skilling up opportunities, and that's a real positive.
Yep.
Great.
So Tom, why don't you take us out with our final question?
Traditional last question. I don't know if Rocky warned you about this, Joy.
He did.
All right.
and
so
let's see where the answer is. So
there you go. So as always, we ask at the end, if you could spend a day with anybody from our profession, living or dead, who would that person be?
Well, I told Rocky, we were talking yesterday, I started to say Browning Marion but I understand that's a very popular one because, you know, Browning was, I miss him. I miss him as a mentor and as a friend, right? But someone else I think that's worth calling out that, again, a mentor and a friend, and also a very entertaining dinner companion, is Nigel Murray.
Yeah, of course.
And it would be absolutely fantastic to spend a day with Nigel, because in a lot of ways, Nigel invented e-discovery the way we think of it today, and understanding how those technologies made inroads. How did you pitch the very first organization that was going down this path? And I think what you end up doing is really learning how to pitch new technology in general by talking to these people who were pioneers, because you want to talk about risk takers. I mean, these were really big risk takers in a bet the company litigation, a very labor intensive series of tasks that were generating huge amounts of legal fees. And you were asking people to turn a model on its head. And now we can't imagine it being the way that it was before. And you want to understand how those people accomplished that amazing thing, right?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's funny, almost everyone who mentions Browning says what you just said, which is, I miss him. But I also miss Nigel, and I really, in my mind, I equate Nigel with ILTA. It's where I first met him, was at ILTA Con. Yeah. And I used to look forward to it, as I think he did as well, especially when it was in Las Vegas, where Nigel would be in all of his glory.
Yes, definitely in his glory. And I also really miss his... I mean, if you don't know, Nigel did a lot of charitable work.
Yes.
And he particularly used to do this bike ride for the British counterpart of Wounded Warriors. I don't remember off the top of my head what it was called. Yep. And they would do this bike ride basically from Normandy to Berlin, and every year to raise money for that. And he was so passionate about it.
Yes.
And
but I always wondered how he could do it. You know,
yeah.
Nigel liked the life in the fast lane, and also smoked like a chimney. And then he told me that he would go into training for that event where he just wouldn't smoke, wouldn't drink, would start running, and get ready for it. More power to him, but I do remember it was but also a cause dear to his heart. Yeah.
It absolutely was. And you know, and we had a lot of conversations about it, because my husband's a Vietnam veteran, and he was you know, badly wounded in Vietnam, and we're very involved in veterans charities. And he also volunteers for a group called Team Rubicon, which are veterans that go into, I mean, you've seen them in New Orleans, I know, Tom. They come down there after hurricanes and tornadoes and help people clean up, and they're an amazing organization. In fact, he did a tour in New Orleans a couple years ago after the tornadoes, and helping people clean up, and this need to support people who have served others for so long is just it's a very important.
I've heard people refer to visiting New Orleans as many things. That's the first time I've heard it called doing a tour.
Yes.
In many senses, it is combat duty.
It is. It absolutely is. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
So.
But Nigel, every time I think of Nigel, I just smile. You know, he always made me laugh. He always just was full of joy, no matter what was going on. He was just a happy person and smart. So, You know, the business side of him knew exactly what it was doing, but always with that smile on his face and able to bring happiness to the people around him. So I think that's
also dapper. I think
yeah.
we also mentioned dapper.
Always.
Never caught dead in a Baltimore Ravens t-shirt.
So, hey Joy, before we sign off, what's the URL or the website for the for ILTA ILTA On?
ILTAON.org.
ILTAON.org. So anybody who wants more information, wants to sign up, wants to attend, certainly comes with 2 thumbs up from Tom and Rocky. But highly urge you, ILTAON.org.
Yep, and and if you ever have any questions for me, I mean, I'm pretty accessible, as you guys know, and I can just be reached at joy@iltanet.org. I mean, it's pretty easy.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Always a great pleasure to talk to you. I certainly will be at ILTA On, so we'll see you. We'll see you around the virtual hall there, and look forward to talking to you again, Rocky. Thank you as always, and we look forward to seeing everyone else next time on the eDiscovery channel. Thanks.
Thank you, and looking forward to when we can all meet again in person. I'm suffering from serious hug withdrawal. I mean, you guys know I'm like a serial hugger, so I have a lot of lost hugs to make up for. So be on the lookout for when we are together again.
All right.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, guys.
You bet.